What is up, everybody? Bear with us for a couple of minutes here. Let me get Darren up here on the space for co-host. We've done probably 300 of these or more in the past year and a half, and can't think of a bigger space that we've had the opportunity to facilitate here. So give us a second here. We are supposed to have Tim Draper coming on in about 2 minutes for the first hour. Huge shout out to Darren for helping us put this together. And then if you guys stick around at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we've got a pretty big cross-chain panel with Andre Casterman, XDC and Trade Tech, Ben Jorgensen of Constellation, Fabian Vogelsteller of Luxo, Matthew Niemerg of Aleph Zero. We've got Nibra from the Next Era ecosystem and Brilliant, and Mei Chan, CEO of Hashback out of Hedera. So bear with us for a couple minutes here. We will get the ball rolling in just a second, guys. Darren, you should have co-host invite. How's my mic, Darren?
Sounds good. How's mine coming in?
Pretty good, yeah. So I would say we should keep an eye out on emails just in case, and give it a couple of minutes here. I know that we've confirmed about 10 times. So all things in consideration, we should have Tim on in a couple of seconds here, guys. So bear with us for a few minutes. Yeah, Darren. I mean, I was reached out to by a couple people asking the process of getting somebody like Tim Draper onto a Twitter space for an interview, and I think that there's not really a one-track solution there besides just persistence. From what you were telling me.
Yeah, I just kind of find somebody that I want on, and I just keep at it until I hear from them. But I mean, you have to just kind of spread out and kind of look for contact us on the websites and just keep emailing people until something hits.
Yeah, we'll give this a few minutes, guys. So bear with us here. Anything else that's come out over the past? Wow, I know that there was huge news coming out of the Ripple Hedera ecosystem this morning, which is pretty interesting. And then I know that you've got a question for Tim as he comes up here about Biden basically saying that he's going to veto any sort of legislation that comes through stating that banks can hold Bitcoin directly and crypto directly. But there's a lot to get into here. We're excited to have the opportunity today. Again, we'll be a little bit patient up here while we wait for Tim to come in and get the ball rolling. But yeah, Darren, I don't know if you saw anything else that stuck out to you recently. I know you do such a good job putting these questions together. We've got like a good 6 pages of questions that we'll try to get through here.
Yeah, I'm going to be selective on the ones I pick, but yeah, the DREC news is pretty interesting news, right? It's decentralized recovery, Algorand, Constellation, Hedera, everybody's working together so you can figure out your keys if you lose them.
I have sent an invite to Tim. You should have it, sir. I would recommend joining from your cell phone, but we will get you up here. You should have speaker invite. We'll give Tim a couple minutes to come up. I know Twitter Spaces is always interesting. That's why we always do, recommend joining from cell phone. Laptops always historically give us some issues. Headphones give people issues sometimes as well, but we'll bear with Tim for a couple minutes here as he gets sorted, and super excited to have the opportunity to interview literally a legend across finance and industry, Tim Draper, today. We've got quite a bunch of questions up here, and then I'll preface it again for those of you guys sticking around. Hour 2 here, so starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we have the opportunity to interview Andre Casterman, so Trade Tech and the XTC ecosystem, Ben Jorgensen, CEO of Constellation, Fabian Vogelsteller of Luxo, Matthew Niemerg of Aleph Zero. We've got Hedera representation out of Hashpack, their largest wallet, as well as Nebro from Brilliant. But
I'm
I know we have Tim up here.
I'm here. Sorry, I had trouble with my laptop, so I'm on the phone now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, sir. I have to say, I prefaced it this way: Darren and I have become desensitized to the amount of news that we see across the digital asset ecosystem, and especially with how many interviews we've done. But I cannot think of a bigger opportunity than to be able to interview somebody like you today, sir. So we certainly appreciate you joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show. It's always these are always fun. They do get a lot of exposure, but it's very different from being on Zoom calls. So it's back to the old way where it's like being on the phone.
Yeah, and hopefully, I'm always interested with this platform. You would expect at some point in time that we get into some more face-to-face video type interviews. But that being said, we have a ton of, hopefully interesting questions for you today. I know that you've probably been interviewed countless times in this space, but we would love to give you the opportunity to maybe share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today. I mean, the businesses and initiatives that you've been involved in, from venture capitalism to education to even reality TV. We would love maybe just an intro of yourself, sir. That'd be great.
Yeah, the reality TV and the current show that we have, the I guess it's a game show. Um, they came out of a very interesting talk I had with Richard Edelman, who was who was like the number one PR guy in the world. And I asked him, well, what do you recommend? And he said, for every company, they should be their own media company. And I started to think about that, and I thought, oh, wow. So how would I do that? And I've tried many different things, and a lot of them have failed, but Meet the Drapers is a resounding success, where we interview 4 entrepreneurs each episode, and then they work their way up to the finale. And then we give away $1 million at the finale. We started the show as a crowdfunding show, and the viewers could fund it. And I got a little knock on my door from the SEC, and I said, we're using this crowdfunding group, and everything's fine. And they knew everything was fine, but they were not anticipating that crowdfunding would be like mass media crowdfunding. So I backed away, and so we've just uh, built a huge following. At first, I couldn't get my mother to watch it, and now we have 100 million viewers. So, so that's my media answer. The answer to the venture capital business, it was my grandfather was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He did it for about 3 years, and he funded some interesting things. I don't know how he did, whether he was successful or not. He had an amazing career doing a whole bunch of other things. He led the Marshall Plan, economic part of the Marshall Plan after World War II for Germany and Japan. They were pretty successful. And he did he ran the utility in Mexico. He ran the Long Island Railroad. Really extraordinary guy. My dad was a pioneer in venture capital, and he did he really did help drive venture capital in the Silicon Valley. And so the last thing I wanted to do was be a venture capitalist because it was in my family, but I guess it's in my blood because I wanted to start as an entrepreneur, and I couldn't decide on one focused thing to do, and so I realized that I was better off being a venture capitalist, hedging my bets. Now, since then, after I was able to, rise up as a venture capitalist, I started to have some flexibility to be an entrepreneur, and so I started a school for entrepreneurs, Draper University. And we always say that at Draper University, where at Harvard and Stanford, they take you for 4 years and 85% of you will get a job. And at Draper University, we take you for 5 weeks, sometimes 10. And our average graduate creates 7 jobs. So it's and then my venture business started with a loan from the SBIC, and I put that to work, and I almost lost it all because they were calling the loan. I went from their watch list to their dirt list, and I flew back to Washington to try to convince them to hold off on that, on calling the loan. And within about 6 months of that, we had the IPO window opened up, and we had 5 IPOs, and one was Parametric Technology. And I went from being on their dirt list to being venture capitalist of the year. They put me up on the wall, and then so I had a framed picture of myself on the wall of the SBIC program about 6 months after they were about to call my loan. And then I'd been at it about 7 years. I brought in John Fisher. We raised a fund. Then we brought in Steve Jurvetson, raised another fund, and then we kept growing. And we had like 10, 12, we had 12 partners. And I thought, well, I'll work on the international stuff. And I flew all over the world setting up venture deals, and funded Baidu and Skype out there in the wild world, and felt it was my mission to spread venture capital and entrepreneurship around the world. And I thought that was enough, because I feel like that's happened. And then Bitcoin showed up, and because the internet was so great, I thought, wow, I just hit it just right. Everything was great. Wow, it was amazing. And then Bitcoin showed up, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is even bigger. And this is a transformation of the entire economy. And so I realized that I had to get ahead of it. And I bought some Bitcoin it was supposed to be at $4 a Bitcoin. Turned out there were all sorts of shenanigans going on. But I did get some Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin was somehow stored at Mt. Gox. And so they disappeared my money somehow. And I thought that was the end of Bitcoin. I thought, oh, well, nice experiment. But then I started digging around, and I realized, whoa, this is really important. It's not just for guns and drugs. In fact, guns and drugs didn't really work out for those people because the blockchain keeps perfect records. It's for remittance. It's for paying people internationally. It's for bringing people who are unbanked or unbankable into the global economy. And I realized this is so big and so important. And the decentralized part of it meant that being centralized was a flaw in the economic system. So central banks and any currency issuances by political people were flaws in a otherwise pretty nice system. And so Bitcoin solved that with its decentralization. Now, people ask me, well, why didn't you invest in FTX? We passed on them twice. We passed on BlockFi. We passed on, because we saw 1,000 people doing the exact same thing, and it was all centralized. And that's why I became such a lover of Bitcoin and other decentralized tokens and currencies. If they're centralized, it's okay, but it's really got to have a purpose. It's got to have a reason to be, like a United Miles or something. That was a long answer. Are you guys still there?
Well, yeah, thanks for the answer. It's interesting. It's like the ultimate form of wealth creation is entrepreneurship. But I was searching for previous interviews you're on, and everything said billionaire Tim Draper. And I noticed like the first thing I think of when a billionaire is like a Monty Burns or like Rothschilds. And the first interview I clicked on was about spreading positivity and how your failures can become successes. So I just wanted to know like how your perspective has kind of shaped your life.
Oh, well, money comes and goes, and the number billion, is I guess a point that people like to focus on. But I kind of just think of it as like, hey, I'm doing what I can for the world, and I always want the businesses I back to be successful because they're not doing anybody any favors if they're not. And so I've been fortunate that I've been able to back some of the things that have become common names in the world, Tesla and SpaceX. Tesla was one guy when I backed it. It wasn't even Elon; it was Martin Eberhard. And SpaceX was Elon, and he already had made huge progress launching rockets. But the moment after we wrote that check to SpaceX, um, he the next three rockets he launched blew up, like blew up in gone. Um, but he stuck with it, and he's so amazing. Um, and then Hotmail really completely transformed the world, made everybody able to communicate with anybody else for free. And then Skype did it in audio and then in video. And I think that those are two really transformative companies that we were able to. We were the seed investor in both of them, and so I just love doing what I do, and as long as I can keep making money doing it, I'll just keep at it. Uh, and it's it's an exciting world out there, and it's a world that anyone can transform, and that's why Draper University is so valuable. It attracts. We've attracted students from 102 different countries. We call them entrepreneurs, but they're our students, and now it's harder to get into than pretty much almost any school in the world. I can't say in the world because IIT Bombay takes one out of 100,000 or something for their computer science program. But it's that allows me to kind of keep my ear to the ground and my feet on the ground um, as I evaluate new companies. I look at what I'm 65, what the 28-year-olds are thinking. So that's kind of what I do, and yeah, it's just a number. People glorify it, but it's a number.
We were.
I
Sorry,
don't,
go ahead.
I don't actually like the term billionaire because I wasn't an heir to $1 billion. But they like to do that, and I also I kind of bow down to the great entrepreneurs of the world who've transformed our lives. I mean, in 4 hours, because of Jeff Bezos, in 4 hours I can get a toothbrush, just delivered to me. I can, because of Uber, I can be lost anywhere, and as long as I know what my destination is, I can get there. Um, these are really transformative companies, and they've done extraordinary things for us. This iPhone, my God, the thing I'm talking into, this is completely transformative. I mean, you've got to have lived a long life to have seen how important all these entrepreneurs are for our society. So I really I bow down to the entrepreneurs that have done these extraordinary things for our world. And I also bow down to the ones who didn't make it. You know, the MySpaces of the world or whatever, the ones who didn't quite get there. They were the ones who, you know, they were pioneers. They tried stuff. It didn't quite happen, but they moved the ball along so Facebook could happen. You know, it was that kind of thing. So I think we've got a society that sort of plays up the riches of these people, but not the riches they've created for all of us.
Yeah, 100%. We were watching. It's interesting. You talk about kind of the evolution of technology and looking at distributed ledger and blockchain and digital assets. Looking back, you did an interview with Gary Gensler in like 2020 or 2021, and you go over kind of the status of technology adoption from these, you know, incumbents and the traditional status quo. And it's a really interesting video. I'll try to pin that up to the top if we can find it, or Darren, if you
Boy,
want
you
to.
did deep research.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were on a panel in front of the Fed. We were on a panel talking about Bitcoin in front of the Fed, and I was, you know, so excited about it. I was saying, "Hey guys, you guys are centralized. You're not. It's not going to play well for you. Go, you know, figure out how you can adapt to this new world." And Gary was much more reserved on all that stuff. But I thought he was going to be a good choice for the SEC, but I didn't realize he would create a dark cloud over all innovation. Um, you know, I think we've got the wrong administration for all this. Um, I was pushing very hard for Nikki Haley because she's a free marketer and very bright, and I thought she'd be a fantastic candidate. But and I don't. I think this one was kind of set up for the rematch. There were too many things going in their favor. I mean, if you were the head of the Republican Party and you knew Nikki Haley would blow out Biden by 17 points, and you knew that Trump was about an even shot, why would you immediately back Trump unless there was some insider thing going on? He does have kind of a cult following. And I didn't understand it until I watched some Fox News. So we've got a problem in the U.S. because we're losing the innovators. They're going to Dubai. They're going to El Salvador. They're going to start going to Argentina because that guy's such a free market thinker. Going to Uruguay. They're going to the free places on the earth.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in that interview, Tim, where you talk about these phases too, and I'm just curious where you think we're at with these phases, and I think it's probably like a multifaceted question, because you could tackle that with how blockchain and distributed ledger affects, you know, payments, or you can tackle it in the digital identity stuff. But what I found really interesting is you talk about just this process where at first the incumbents reject it and they just dismiss it and they say the technology it's nothing, and then it gets too big to ignore and then they fight back, and then you start seeing lawsuits and the legal action stuff, and then eventually the technology is adopted. I guess the question that I have for you is, where do you think that we're at along that journey of adoption with blockchain and distributed ledger?
Oh, I think they're starting to accept it. You know, they've been fighting it a long time, and that's why I was thinking, you know, Biden is so out of touch because everyone is starting to recognize that, hey, this is better. Bitcoin is not just better gold; it's better currency, and they're fighting it tooth and nail because they like the control they have. At least in the U.S., they like the control they have over the central bank, um, and so they've been putting up, barriers wherever they could. But this is a snowball. It's just coming. It's a you know it's a drum beat. We've got a drum beat going, and the drum beat just continues over and over and over. And it's the Bitcoin drum beat. Maybe I should have written that song. I wrote a song called the Bitcoin um, Hustle, which then I turned to the Bitcoin Shuffle, and now it should be the Bitcoin drum beat, because it is coming. You feel it, and the beat just keeps going. And think of all the things that have hit Bitcoin over the years, and it just keeps coming. It's clearly needed around the world. And where some governments are going, no, we like our central bank, other governments are going, whoa, this can transform our economy. And arguably, that genius in El Salvador could end up taking a country that was one of the poorest in the world, deeply in debt to the IMF, and transform it into one of the richest countries in the world, and be able to pay off the IMF with a blink. I think this, apparently it's gone also from one of the most dangerous to one of the safest countries in the world too. It's amazing how a leader can really make a difference, or really either screw it up or make it great. And fortunately, we got a lot of friction in the U.S. for any one leader to screw it up too much. But they sure are trying.
100%. Darren, I know that you probably have a question too.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you think central bank digital currencies are a reaction to the crypto world, or do you think the governments want the utility of instant taxation, the elimination of privacy, instant sanctions?
The government bureaucrats I know, they don't want anything to change. They want to go to work, do their thing, come back from work, and then 5 o'clock rolls around, they're out. The politicians, they just want popularity, and so they will jump to the front of the parade as soon as they feel like the wind is going in a new way. And I guess that's one definition of a leader, a politician who is the middle person. Like as soon as just before 51% decide this is a good idea, that politician jumps in front. So I think that the U.S. government has clearly not played this well. Bill Clinton played it very well when people said, you got to tax the internet, you got to regulate the internet, you got to whatever. And he just said, well, let's just see how this thing goes. And by seeing how that thing went, he has allowed trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of value to be created. The greatest companies in the world were all now U.S. companies. And that's all because he backed off. Well, now, if the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin, we're going to get the $10 trillion businesses out of Bitcoin. We're in a bit of a pickle here in the U.S. because our regulators are stepping up before they even know what could happen with it. And they have, God, I mean, they've done it all wrong. It's like they embraced FTX, which was centralized, and they have, pushed away all these really cool tokens, and they've spread fear throughout the innovation group because they're saying, "Oh no, the SEC can come after me. I'm not going to do that," and they're not allowing innovation. And I think that means the countries that do encourage innovation are going to be years ahead of the ones who get in the way. Um, so I think you're going to see a transformation of wealth. Uh, and it usually does. It flies from the control-based countries to the free countries. So countries that create a bunch of rules and regulations, they usually die on the vine. China was booming when it was free, and now they've got that weak man as a leader, and he's creating all sorts of rules and regulations and telling everybody what to do, and he is stalling that what was an incredible economy there. So yeah, so governments that set very clear rules and trust their people and set them free are the ones who build the biggest economies. And that's where it solves all the other problems. They get plenty of jobs. They have fewer mental health problems. They have fewer people on the streets. They create more wealth for their society. They create, um, you know, nicer structures to live in, uh, better health care, better education. All those things happen when you trust people and set them free with very clear rules. When they're nebulous and it's regulation by enforcement, or it's, hey, you can't really do anything new, or we'll come slap you down, uh, that flattens an economy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, Tim, if you look at, and I'm curious your thoughts on like just investment thesis and philosophy and how, from your stance, it's changed and evolved over the years. And maybe mainly in the context of, we look at blockchain and DLT and all these things, and there's a lot of like technologies that are starting to seemingly converge into blockchain and DLT, whether it's AI or some of the digital identity stuff with zero knowledge. What are your kind of thoughts around the ways that these technologies converge, and how do you look at that from like an investment standpoint, or how would you look at that from an investment standpoint?
Well, I'm doing a lot of the layer 2 things, the things that are making Bitcoin more uh, usable and that kind of thing. I don't, remarkably, don't do, as the first to jump into all the future of finance, the fintech business, and it really paid off well for me. But now, so many entrepreneurs are um, creating fintech businesses that we feel like there's no real added value for us to get involved in that. But we do spend, and also they over time they will commoditize. So what we like to look at are those entrepreneurs that are sort of cutting new ground or allowing people to do more things. We're trying to transform an entire global economy that's been built over hundreds of years it's been built through the banking system. Now we're trying to transform the entire global economy. It's sort of has to happen one step at a time. Um, I had not anticipated DeFi being a big deal because I just thought, well, we got a new currency. Let's make it easy to spend at retail. So I backed OpenNode, and let's make it something that works with smart contracts. So we backed a bunch of those, and now since NFTs are such a thing, I think ordinals are potentially going to be really important to verifying everything from assets to people to artwork to whatever. So a lot of great things are happening. There is an enormous amount of creative activity going around Bitcoin. And I think it's similar to when Microsoft was, Microsoft had this platform, their operating system. That platform was uh, a really exciting place to be. And people were building a lot of interesting things on it. But only a few really rose to the top. And one was Lotus 123, and one was WordPerfect. And Microsoft just went and they said, okay, well, we're going to compete with those two. Go ahead, play on our on our platform, but we're gonna copy you if you figure out something that's really successful. And I think that's what's happened is a lot of people did a lot of experimenting on a lot of different tokens, and now they're looking and they're saying, now we're going to put the most important ones on Bitcoin. And that, I think that's sort of the next leg here. Yeah, industries go through a cycle. They also, there's also sort of a hype cycle, and the hype cycle goes up in the form of a cursive I and then into an S at the end, where uh, first it goes into this cursive I with the hype monster at the top of the I. That might have been like 2017 for Bitcoin. And then it comes down and people go, oh, what's anybody going to use this for? And blah. It's a little like what happened to the internet. It went up in a big hype, the dot-com bubble. And then it came down and people were saying, well, Google creates viruses and, I'm not going to put my credit card on Amazon. And there were so many things coming out. And then those companies became bigger than anybody ever imagined by about 100 times. I think the same thing's now happening with entrepreneurship around Bitcoin. A lot of great innovation, and those companies, I think, 10 years from now are going to be the $10 trillion companies.
I've noticed a trend of people embracing socialism and communism, and it's just, are you concerned about some of these trends? I noticed a lot more younger people are like, very pro-socialism or very pro-communism. So I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts on that? And like, do you have an exit plan in case the United States gets overrun by something like that?
Yes. I mean, yes, I'm always thinking about that. But I think the young people are starting to react to that socialism feeling that was happening. They were all thinking, oh, yeah, we should all be socialists. And then, a few of them maybe made a trip to Cuba and they realized that was the stupidest thing they ever said. And, socialism, only benefits the few at the top. And communism, same thing. They're both the same thing. It's like all of us to be the same. But then, of course, you kill the inventiveness and the motivation and the drive of all the people on the planet, and that's really the end of the global economy. And then you create huge starvation across the planet. Think of where you get your food and how many people touch it, and where that comes from. Think of where you get your housing and how many people are involved in that. How many people are involved in getting you clothes? How many people are involved in keeping your health? Um, that would shut down. There would be no motivation to do any good work uh, in a socialistic or communistic environment, and that's what's happening. I mean, South Korea uh, and North Korea had a demilitarized zone between them after the war. And in North Korea, they took on socialism and communism and a dictatorship, and they told everybody what to do, and that's basically socialism. It tells everybody what to do, and then they do it. And in South Korea, it was a free market, open system, free speech, open border, capitalistic democracy. And what happened? Okay, 70 years later, it's about 3 generations. You now have South Koreans making 460 times. The average South Korean makes 460 times what the average North Korean makes. And the average South Korean is now 4 inches taller than the average North Korean. The average North Korean has enough food for 9 days out of a month. The average North Korean gets counted out by the government 24 grains of corn, and that's considered lunch. Is that what those people really want? Those people saying, oh, we should have socialism? What are they thinking? They have no idea what a disaster socialism is, and how corrupting and ruinous of a country.
We still have you there, Tim, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Yes, we heard you. We heard you. I think at the very, very tail end, I think I thought that we might have lost you there, but we did hear you. And yeah, great question. Great question, Darren. Appreciate throwing kind of the big picture stuff in. On kind of the topic of the big picture stuff, Tim, I'm curious from your stance. Now we're seeing tokenization, and really kind of start to take form, and real world adoption of a lot of these like funds being tokenized, things like that. When you look at how big this space is going to get, I mean, what is your kind of anticipation lead you towards? I mean, you can think about the derivative markets and everything else that come into play, but medium to long term, where do you think blockchain and distributed ledger, Bitcoin, digital assets go as far as like market share? Is the world going to be tokenized?
Oh, yeah. Why? I mean, I think about Proppy going and tokenizing real estate so that everybody knows who owns what. Today, we pay this total friction item, which is I don't think you have to pay. Maybe it's much lower. Blockchain. Everybody knew what everybody owned everywhere around the world. I think that's going to be a really valuable thing long term. And then I think the key here to great success in tokenization is going to be identity. I think making sure you know who it is.
We got him.
Sorry, I'm getting a few calls in the middle here. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really big part of our world. I don't think. I think anything that's on a database is going to be tokenized eventually, and I think we're going to have the blockchain was a really extraordinary creation. I think that's going to open up all sorts of new fields and more trust around the world, and more trust breeds more freedom. So that's always good for me.
Darren?
Yeah, so I wanted to just know about my toughest experiences have kind of shaped my outlook on life, and some of my failures have later turned.
I don't hear you guys.
Okay, can you hear us now, Tim?
Yeah, I hear you.
Darren, you try to talk. Let's see if Tim can hear you.
Can you hear me right now? Can you hear me all right now, Tim?
I don't think Tim can hear you, Darren. I'm curious. Darren, hop down and then hop back up. Tim, you can still hear me though, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I think where Darren was going is some of our toughest experiences in life often shape, kind of the way that we interact in life, kind of moving forward, kind of learning from failures. And some of those kind of failures sometimes end up turning into like blessings and successes and things like that. Have you had experiences like that throughout your career? And have you kind of seen that type of stuff resonate to you where something that you looked at as a failure in the past may have turned into new opportunities or branching out into different things that actually ended up kind of being a success?
Oh, absolutely. We backed a company called Upside Magazine a long, long time ago. It was the first tech periodical ever, first one that did any work talking about the tech industry or any of that stuff. And it was amazing. But it gave me a window into what a pain it was to ship actual physical magazines. And when it was possible to just spread a magazine through the internet, I knew that was going to be a big deal, and probably helped us in thinking about building Hotmail. I tried to actually invest in Yahoo, but we also
Did
doing.
we lose? I got you back, right, Tim?
Yep, I'm here.
We lost you at investing in Yahoo. You still there, Tim? Sorry.
And so, we tried to invest in Yahoo, and it didn't work out. But I had a good sense for that Yahoo was going to be a big win, and I got a good sense for how that search engines in general were going to be a big win, and all that was because of the failure in Upside Magazine. So, the idea that Upside took 10 years to get 100,000 readers, and we at Hotmail, it took us let's see, 18 months to get to, I don't know, something like 30 million viewers. We really got a good sense for it. Hey, I'm going to have to end it here. One more question, and I'm going to have to go.
I guess my last question is: so we always talk to so many diverse ecosystems. We've got industry leaders coming up in like 5.
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me now, Darren? Maybe he can hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Tim?
Yeah.
All right. So, where could we find you, and where can we find out more about you, Tim?
Oh, well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tim Draper on Twitter, and if you're an entrepreneur and you've got a business plan, you can send me an email, tim@draper.vc. But I just really, it's only if you got a business and you've created the plan and you're going for it. Otherwise, don't send me an email, or my box gets pretty full.
What advice, Tim?
But hey, thanks for having me on the
Thank
show.
you so much, Tim.
Hope it came out all right on the other end.
100%.
Yeah, it was great. We appreciate your time and appreciate you coming. It was really a pleasure to speak to you, Tim. And you have a book, right?
Yeah, I have a book called How to Be the Startup Hero. I wrote it after having taught at the entrepreneurial school for about 5 years. I realized I was starting to repeat myself, and I thought, well, I can just write a book and then people can read it. And I got another one coming out, although I don't know, I'm so slow to get it out. It might be years, but got another one coming out that's a little bit more about the more of the macro stuff we were talking about. So that might be fun to hear.
Thanks, Tim. We
Thank you so
appreciate the
much for your
time.
time today, Tim.
All right. Nice talking with all of you. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was amazing. We appreciate the opportunity. All
Yeah.
right.
I just want to also say thank you for okay, you chopped already out. And let's continue.
Yeah, we were thinking that we had 10 more minutes with Tim, Fabian. I knew that when the phone calls started coming in that we were probably running out of runway there.
Yeah. Cool. But we have here a lot of people and a panel.
And a panel, yes, sir. So super excited for those of you guys that are with us. We have quite the diverse, I guess I would say, cross-chain leader panel up here with us today. Obviously, Mr. Fabian Vogelsteller, pretty much the inventor of ERC20 and smart contracts, and obviously a founder of Luxo. Luxo is building out the new creative economies globally with kind of user experience at the core. We have Andre Casterman coming up from Trade Tech and the XDC ecosystem. Ben Jorgensen, CEO of Constellation. We've got Mei Chan coming up, the CEO of Hashpack. Matthew Niemer, co-founder of Aleph Zero. And we've got Nibra coming up from the Nexera ecosystem within Brilliant. So we've got quite the panel for you today, Fabian. And you guys have been busy with Luxo as well as we get the other guests up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I find it funny when Tim mentioned the exact two things, that, we have been working on is tokenization. I have been working in the past, obviously with ERC20, and then identity, which is literally what we are working on right now with, the smart contract account on Luxo. The only thing that is a bit funny that everybody in the past, when ERC20 happened and the whole tokenization wave and ICOs and DeFi, then suddenly everything was a token, then even identity is a token and everything is to be tokenized. And now everything has to be an NFT. There's a lot more things we can do in smart contracts that are far beyond a token or an NFT. And identity is one of those, which is an account. And an account functions very different than a token or an NFT. It's a very versatile, very generic system that needs to be generic because otherwise you can't do anything or everything. And especially the things that you can't anticipate before it has been built, right? A smart contract account should also work in 5 years for the protocols that came out 3 years later after it was created. So this genericability, if that's a word, genericism has to be there.
It's funny, you see a lot of NFTs that come out and then later become fractionalized, right? They take an NFT and then fractionalize it. So they could have started off with just a fungible token, but instead they make an NFT and then make fractional ownership of the NFT.
I'm trying to invite up Andre as well as everybody else. So May, if you're down there, Andre from Trade Tech and XDC, Ben from Constellation, Matthew from Aleph Zero, and Nibra from Brilliant. If you guys want to hop up, please feel free. While everybody hops up, I will say, Fabian, I've had the opportunity to look into really kind of dive deeper, at least start to really dive deeper into all the aspects within Luxo recently. And when you get into identity, my interpretation is that between virtualization, identification, and tokenization, I would imagine, and we'll get into the whole panel here in a second, but identity's really got to be at the core. Because if you can't authenticate and have identity, whether it's people, places, things, assets, whatever it may be, then the tokenization almost becomes like, what's the purpose? And then why do you care about virtualization? Because if you don't have identity kind of solved out, what do you care if you can do things with your assets that you might not own or that might not be identified properly? Is that kind of the right assumption there?
No, this is spot on, and I mean this is the reason why the blockchain space hasn't moved beyond everything with tokens where it's just about trading and money, because the identity piece was missing. And the identity piece was always either solved, as a separate system where you connect your wallet. Again, there's a differentiation between your wallet and that identity thing. And most of the time, if you look at Civic and other protocols, they attach some arbitrary token, some arbitrary, gate, to the identity. They didn't make a unbiased, generic account or identity system. It was always just, specific use case, need a specific token. It's actually semi off chain, and you still have to deal with wallets on chain, and the rest is a completely isolated system. And hence why identity never took off so far, but it has been the missing piece in the ecosystem. Like, we haven't moved beyond a certain point because of that missing piece. And yeah, exactly like you say, without an identity, you can do 90% of the really cool use cases not at all properly, because you can't identify the user, the source, even in a DAO. What is the DAO, right? The DAO nowadays is like a Discord community or whatever Telegram group that then may or may not have a smart contract where you don't know who is even in there, right? Because there's a bunch of random addresses, maybe some token holders, maybe a list of addresses that may or may not have an ENS name, may or may not relate to the people that you find in the chat groups. And it's completely intransparent. There's a separation from the off-chain to the on-chain world. And as long as that separation exists, things don't really become social on blockchain. There's always two worlds. There's the Web2 social world, and there's the off-chain cryptic world. And on Luxo, we merged the two. We brought the profile on chain by inventing the first smart contract account that is fully standardized, that took years to figure out. In fact, 5 years. ES 725, which is the essence of this smart contract account I proposed in 2017. Literally straight the next standard after 721, the NFT standard. Pretty much exactly at the same time, like maybe a week later. And that has been now evolved on Luxo as this smart contract account on an EVM chain that basically allows you to have a wallet, a profile, an account at the same time. So everything is now the same thing. The address that you have on chain is your wallet, but it's also your profile. It can hold information, but it can also be used by different devices with different levels of permission, because the keys that control the profile are irrelevant. They're replaceable. They're just temporary. But your smart contract account, this is the address that the protocols interact with, the tokens interact with, the people interact with. If they want to read information from it, that's the same address. So everything comes from the same address, which now gives you, how I call it, a root identity. It gives you one place to go look if you want to find out about anyone on the chain. And because that wallet is a profile, now if you have a DAO and you participate in a DAO, it's a face, it's a profile, who's voting, who's holding the tokens, who's doing the actions on chain, and it's the same profile that you then also find in other places, which makes everything, identifiable.
No, I really appreciate the breakdown, Fabian, as well. And I know that we've got, I think, the majority of the panel up here today. I am super excited to have a couple of you up here, well, all of you, but I have not had the opportunity to, I think, ever have Andre Casterman on from the XDC and Trade Tech ecosystems. And same thing with Nibra. I mean, I know that we talked yesterday, Nibra, and congratulations on your role as the new CEO of Brilliant. I know out of the Nextera ecosystem, which is really cool. I'd like to do just like maybe, and I know we kind of did the intro with Fabian up here. Maybe I do a round robin real quick. We just do like maybe 30-second, 45-second intros, and then we'll kind of get into the meat and potatoes here. But Matthew Niemerg, it is always great to have you back, sir. If you want to just give a quick intro of yourself, that'd be fantastic.
No, thanks for having us, or having me, or or having me be able to talk about LF0. So I am one of the co-founders of LF0, and we are essentially focusing on building out scalable, privacy-enhancing applications on chain.
Awesome. That was really brief. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. We're definitely going to dig into the weeds with you guys. Thank you, Matt. Mei Chan. And for those that don't know, Mei Chan is not only the CEO of Hashpack, which is the most widely used wallet on Hedera. May is actually a fighter as well, and at Consensus this year, in just under a month, May is going to be fighting in the pit there. So that's going to be really interesting to watch, May. But if you want to give an intro of yourself, that would be fantastic.
Thanks for the plug. That's a great way to introduce a CEO. Oh, and also she punches people for fun. Um, I'm the CEO of Hashpack. We're the leading wallet on Hedera. We basically helped build the DeFi ecosystem up for the past 3 years, and now we're seeing a lot of traffic and volume on the chain, and it's really, really great. So happy to be here. Happy to talk about karate if we want to, but yeah, it's just kind of like a merging of my hobby and my professional life, and it's really, really weird, but yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, May. And Mr. Casterman, it is a pleasure to have you, sir. I know that the XDC ecosystem and trade tech and trade finance has really been on a roll recently. It's been interesting to watch the announcements, but would love if you could maybe give us just a brief intro of yourself, sir. That would be fantastic.
Yes, hi. Great to be here, and I always love to listen to Tim. I've been doing so for some years. So I'm an advisor and a seed investor in the real economy, mainly in trade finance, SME financing technologies. And over the years, I've worked with Trade Tech, ND, and XDC Network, got the two together. And our goal is definitely, and you will see more coming up soon, to bring on-chain liquidity to the real economy actors. That means small and medium-sized businesses who are getting less and less lending from incumbent financial institutions and banks. So it's all about funding the real economy through tokenization.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Nibras, congratulations on your new role as the CEO of Brilliant. And I know that you have a very diverse background in this space as well, but I would love if you could maybe give us a little bit of an intro of yourself. That'd be great.
Thank you so much. So, yes, my name is Nibras and I am the CEO of Brilliant. And at Brilliant, so we are a Web3 wallet and we're designed to be the wallet for real world assets, deepen and autonomous agents that I love to dive in and talk more about in later in this show. And we're also very committed to enhance our user experience, security, and making Brilliant just reach 1 billion users. Thereof the name to make everyone a billionaire. So hashtag billionaire. My background is really I've been to SaaS, big tech. So I was at Spotify, and then I've also been the CTPO of Concordium, which is a layer 1 blockchain. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nibras. Really appreciate it. Mr. Jorgensen, I would say congratulations today on the announcement, joining Decentralized Recovery Alliance with a lot of big ecosystems today, sir. And if you could give just an intro of yourself, Ben, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm Ben Jorgensen. I'm the CEO of Constellation Network. We're an ecosystem, a protocol, decentralized native network that allows developers to build application-specific networks. Over the years, for about 5 years, we've been building solutions across the U.S. federal government, primarily the DoD, to bring standards for information sharing across different workflows. Yeah, really excited about the news today, working alongside Ripple and Hedera and Algorand and a few others. So thanks for having me.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you so much. I kind of want to kick off on the discussion that kind of Fabian started us out on here. My first question to all of you, and for those that are down here listening that have joined one of these cross-chain type panels for the first time, the goal here is sometimes we don't see synergy across ecosystems, but you do see over time that there's a little bit of a convergence of some of this technology and some of these ecosystems and networks, and builders are going to build regardless of where they're building. So really like to kind of bring diverse panels together, get a little bit outside of the echo chambers and silos that naturally occur in the space. And hopefully I have like 7 or 8 questions here. I've got like about an hour and a half with you guys up here. Hopefully we'll be able to get through all of them. But I want to kick this off with significant challenges for adoption. And I think Fabian led us into this first question that I had here pretty succinctly. Now, this could be regulatory, this could be education, this could be UX or UI or ease of onboarding. I guess from each of your guys' opinions and ecosystems on the industry as a whole, Where do you see the most significant challenges for adoption, and how do you guys feel like we're best kind of suited to overcome some of those challenges? Let me start with Matthew. If we can touch base on it from maybe the LF0 ecosystem, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, great question. And what you have to think about is there are all sorts of challenges whenever it comes to this space. Either technical challenges, security challenges. People aren't security researchers. Maybe they really shouldn't be involved in holding their private keys. I mean, I saw the news that you mentioned with Constellation and the Decentralized Recovery Alliance. So I mean, these types of solutions are very useful to help basically non-technical people to be able to have access to wallets and have proper recovery solutions. Now, uh, as far as like the bigger adoption problems that we're seeing, do we have, there's regulatory issues as you brought up, whether or not that is, the DOJ in the U.S. coming after Samurai Wallet or and really basically cracking down on privacy. You see that with the both the Samurai Wallet and the indictment and with the Tornado Cash developers. Then you had Wasabi Wallet deciding to shut down and close their operations to the states. So there's generally like this a broader push to at least stop privacy, and that is completely that's not even like covering what's happening on the SEC side and them going after a lot. Look at what they did with they just issued the latest Wells notice to Robinhood. So there's all sorts of like different attacks that are happening. And I think that these types of regulatory actions create a little bit of a slowdown as far as general user adoption, at least in the States. Now, elsewhere, you still have, do we have the killer crypto app? And maybe you can make the argument that stable coins are for the emerging economies like the US stable coins are by and large the killer app. And the reason is because people do want to hold their funds in US dollars. You have people in the emerging and developing countries that don't have access to bank accounts, or they don't have access to U.S. bank accounts, right? U.S. denominated bank accounts. And so then what do? Well, they want the benefit of the U.S. dollar, and they want to have that stability because their local regime is inflating their money faster than the U.S. is inflating the money, which is kind of sad to think about if you really want to take a step back. So there's all sorts of different parts of adoption that we want to consider. Is it retail adoption? Is it corporates and enterprises and an adoption of getting them to be on public chains or to be creating decentralized applications? Is it just the regulatory adoption, or like government nation state adoption to finally accept that this is going to be here and isn't going in anywhere for the most part, and to provide clear rules of the road? And so I mean, as far as like where, how we're solving this at Aleph0, it just comes down to just common sense approaches, right? So if we want to talk about private transactions and having the freedom to transact privately, well, you still have to abide by the, and comply with sanctions laws, at least if you're, in the States or doing business with anybody in the U.S. So there's, and also other countries too. So it's about creating the infrastructure, and we're still in those early nascent stages of building out this infrastructure that can solve a lot of these issues, whether or not it comes from having a decentralized identity using zero knowledge proofs, and then combining that with a private stablecoin solution, so that okay, yes, we can verify that somebody is not on the sanctions list, and now they get access to this walled garden for privacy. Like all these things are doable, but then you get all this other action that's happening at the the nation state level, where they're creating these barriers to entry and barriers to adoption. So it's working with policymakers, it's working with calling up your local congressman. If you're I'm sorry, I'm from the States, so I'm going to have to say, hey, call up your local congressperson and maybe let them know that the this resolution that the President Biden and his administration are wanting to veto if the Senate passes it, that basically says the SEC has been basically doing arbitrary and capricious actions, that they shouldn't be able to do these things, right? And like the Biden administration has said, hey, we're going to veto this. So it's just adoption. Well, okay, well, maybe let's take a step back and understand, well, what got us to where we are. And a lot of that was financial freedom. It's about having fun in the space. It's about having access to new opportunities without the barriers to entry and sort of the venture capital world where you have to be an accredited investor. So there's all sorts of things that we're focusing on, whether or not that's to help build out all these solutions. But it really comes down to supporting projects that are building out these core infrastructure layers that then can be used to build these types of applications that will help bring adoption about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Andre, from trade tech and XTC standpoint, or even just from your own personal standpoint and opinion, I mean, you look at, I should preface this isn't just supposed to be a negative question, because we've seen loads of real world adoption. I guess my question really is, what barriers do we still need to overcome, whether it's regulatory, educational, the user experience aspects, the understanding and ease of onboarding. But Andre, I would love maybe your thought process on this as well, and how do we solve some of those problems?
Yeah, I think Tim alluded to the need to make things more easy and accessible for the mass market and the retail population, and that's definitely what we aiming to achieve by tokenizing illiquid asset classes like trade finance, for instance. So we need, whether we talking about the one or the other use case, we talk a lot about real world assets being tokenized, and actually the whole blockchain space we are in, digital asset space we are in, and we understand to various degrees, needs to become invisible to the end user. It doesn't matter whether actually the use case is 100% digital asset tokenized or partly tokenized. I think the winners over time in some industries, certainly in the traditional industries like I'm in banking, need to bridge the old world, the legacy world, which is running the economy today, like banking today, with the new world of digital assets and tokenization. So we need to bring functions gradually on chain, where the tokenization really brings the additional benefit. But we can't expect the incumbents, as well as retail users, to abandon the tools they like and they trust today and jump on the new world we are building on Web3 technologies. So it's finding the right way to introduce the new technologies where they make sense, where they add value, and avoiding forcing institutions that are resisting change because there is no value for them to jump on the new way of working. So bridging, I think one of the panelists mentioned that they are actively bridging traditional finance or traditional tools with the new Web3 technologies, and that's, in my view, a winning formula. I'm personally also using various Web3 technologies, and sometimes it's so hard and so risky because the technologies are too raw. They are not packaged the right way, and we can't expect mass adoption using by bringing this complexity in front of the end users. A good example of I think you asked about regulation. Regulation is progressing, is being addressed. So I think we see great progress around the world. I was recently talking to the Dubai International Financial Center. They released a new digital asset law because they want to attract Web3 developers to Dubai, to the UAE, and DIFC has potentially the most advanced regulatory framework for digital asset technologies. So that's the best example. US, we know, is there are some issues still, but but on the trade tech side, on the XDC side, we have found ways to work like we have done with Yield Tech through Securitize, the same Securitize that then BlackRock started to use, actually. I don't know if trade tech influenced BlackRock, but definitely it's the same Securitize. And we have launched a few months ago a trade tech powered and XDC based coin, yes, for US Treasury yields. And we're going to do more soon on the trade finance side. But as you will see, the end user is using a traditional way, like a website and so on, to basically handle those digital assets. And the whole complexity of digital assets and tokenization is actually hidden and not impacting the end user. And it's the same we have found with the Bitcoin ETFs. You can now have the traditional players investing into, through BlackRock and others, in Bitcoin without touching the Web3 technologies because these are too complex for them. So more and more very positive news on the regulatory side and on making it easier. And I think that will drive adoption of those new technologies.
Awesome. Thank you, Andre. And Nibras, I saw that you had your mic unmuted for a second. I would love if you could touch base on adoption or challenges for adoption and views on how we can overcome.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to do 100%. I realized how to do it. No, I mean, I think I agree with a lot of what Matthew and Andrew was saying. I think if we just address regulation, I think I see it in an interesting way, to be honest, because I see most disturbing technologies have, in a way, had regulations issues, right? Like we talked about, for instance, I used to be at Spotify, and I mean, we all know back in the days when Napster came and then Spotify, they just had massive regulations on them. I think as human beings, we're often very afraid of the unknown, so we tend to put regulations in place. We're seeing that now with with what's going on in the states, etc. I do think this industry needed some regulation as well, to be honest. Andre, you touched base on like when you're in the industry, and I've been in this industry since 2017, and I agree some of the things that you go through are actually pretty scary. Like no one's going to use this if we actually don't get regulations in place. So I do believe at some aspects some KYC KYB is needed, but I do think regulation will also become adaptable the more use cases we get out there and the better UI UX. So I would say if we can first address that in order to get mass adoption, we do have to create systems that are actually regular. And I do say regular because I think all of us in the space think it's easy, but it's not. If we don't get into the area of interoperability and just making it extremely easy end to end to use a system, so all the way from accessing a wallet to actually doing like something on the blockchain and creating transactions without you as an end user having to understand a lot of technology, we're not going to come to that widespread adoption, in my opinion. So I do think UI UX is of highest importance. I know the industry has talked about it for a while, but I still don't see that massive UI UX integration that I'm looking for in adoption. So I think the onboarding and the need of UI UX is extremely needed, which we at Brilliant are prioritizing to the highest to the highest priority. I also think education. I mean, still, when we talk today to actually people in, like, in my opinion, I've been a lot in big tech, and still, when I talk to leaders in that industry, some of them still associate blockchain with crypto. And then it's like, oh, but that's dodgy, right? So it's also how do we explain to them the technology and everything behind it and what it actually gives you? I mean, it is a more secure system. I see it as just an alternative to regular infrastructure, but being more secure. So if we can educate people more and more, we're also going to get more adoption, which will then lead to regulation in place. And that's also sometimes when we talk about regulation, we just see the negative side of it, while as I also can see a positive side, I think, because when compliance, like people who are in regulatory affairs, when they start understanding technology, they will also put in place technology like laws. An example of that is, for instance, sites, for instance, 18 like sites that you go into them and they ask you, are you 18 or not? We all know which side I'm referring to. Um, and at the moment, you could just tell them you're over 18. But imagine when they start understanding what zero knowledge proofs is, and that you actually can have a wallet that you can then give consent to, and you don't have to give them all your data. The only thing it's asking for is this person over and under 18? And with the zero knowledge proof, you can just tell them, yes, I am, and then you're allowed into the website. I definitely think when governments understand this power of this technology, they will put a law in place that tells the websites that they're not allowed anymore to just ask you to say if you're under or over 18. You do actually have to prove that in a way. So I see a lot of things happening in this space, and I'm myself very excited for what's coming. I see an improvement in UI UX and the onboarding, but I definitely think there are some things uh, to still improve on in order for us to get mass adoption.
Awesome, Nebros. Thank you so much. And Ben, I would love your thoughts on challenges in adoption and some of the ways that we're going to overcome them.
Yeah, I think that everybody said some really powerful things. Being a part of the Digital Chamber of Commerce, one of the things that's so different in having this lobbying, it's a lobbyist group that's focused on, supporting change or lobbying on behalf of digital assets in the U.S. federal government. I don't think we really had that back in 2017, 2018. And it's amazing to see their passion for seeing these policies get enacted, get modified, helping modify certain policies. It's just, there are things happening on the regulatory front. The other thing that I really like what's happening is that in 2018, the SEC went after like the fundraising efforts and hit up everybody with notices for their fundraising efforts. And it's like now they're going after the big cartels. And the big cartels are fighting back, right? Like Consensus is fighting back, Coinbase is fighting back, Uniswap, like that to me is what we needed all along is somebody to kick the beehive and get the queen bee out and defending. And so I think that a lot of this is going to start to really push the government to create guidelines and not just kind of go with a mass, effort to send notices to companies and hope that some of them fail behind the scenes and they might lose some, but they don't care. They're creating so much fear in our world, and they're winning. There is a conspiracy on kind of the old guard trying to maintain order when we should be ushering in kind of this kind of new industry. So I do agree that I think the first thing for adoption is more around regulation, but I also see that a lot is being done. And so if we kind of zoom out several years from now, I'm just glad we have all these things that are happening now for what is going to be a really, really positive future for this entire industry. So for me, on the adoption side, it is happening. I actually see that it's happening right now. All the things are in place, and if it just keeps continuing down a positive track, we're going to be an okay industry. We're actually going to flourish as an industry. But on a more tactical approach, I do think that more businesses in general need to look at Web3 tooling as part of their business in kind of a future state of business 4.0, right? Kind of off of the industry 4.0 vision. And as we see more businesses kind of using this tooling, providing more transparency, loyalty 4.0, they see like what an economy can do by having digital assets. They can see what the technology can do, because I think it'll be a very powerful shift that will also bring in more retail. It'll bring more transaction, network utilities across the board. But we are seeing all these things. Like, we're not at a state of like, oh, the technology is not ready. Like, there's a lot of technology that's ready, and it's being applied, and it's happening. It's literally happening overnight in stride with a lot of the AI initiatives. So in my positive sense is like, it's not a doom and gloom. It's actually like we, just zoom out and you're like, oh yeah, this is the adoption curve that we've all been kind of waiting for. Regulatory pressure coming in, they're taking notice, right? Capital is starting to flow. We're maturing with ETFs, and on the Bitcoin side, like there's really cool things happening. From our side, it's like the federal government really understands the value proposition around data verification, data assurance, all that it's maturing in so many ways. So there's my positive sentiment.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. May, thoughts on challenges for adoption? I know that you guys are, you and Fabian will be interesting because I think that, from your stance and Hashpack stance, you guys have been, kind of single-handedly focused on the user experience or what you've built out through Hashpack. So I would love maybe your thoughts on, or maybe it is, kind of wider industry, but your thoughts on challenges for adoption and some of the ways that this industry may overcome them. Can you hear me, Darren? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
May, can you hear me? We'll give May a second. We'll go to Fabian though, and I know we talk about user experience, and again, kind of single-handedly the focus within what you guys are building with Luxo. So, curious your stance, Fabian, and I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, but for those that weren't with us up here on the panel, challenges for adoption and some of the ways that we overcome them.
I mean, like this was mentioned in the previously. I mean, I fully agree. What Nibras said is the challenge is UX, and the challenge is that the technology right now. I mean, it's a little bit like we're asking people to open up the command line to use the computer, right? And in the past, it was the case. You had Linux, you had MS-DOS, and you need to type stuff to do stuff. When Windows came, with an interface, that's when things happened and changed, and we had basically a way to interact with software better and better and better. And and this is how we are able to access stuff. And right now in blockchain, we're still at the command line level. People need to generate private keys. They need to understand what a private key is in the first place. They need to back up private keys. This is basically a single account with a single password that you cannot change. And that's the problem. So the only way to move forward is by using smart contract accounts, because we have now smart contract platforms, Ethereum being the first and Ethereum being the number one, and everything else is just Ethereum, same like Luxo. And there you can make smart contract accounts. And when you make them in the right way, and that's what we have been focusing on. We have been focusing on building a standard smart contract account. When you do it the right way, then you basically abstract away that private key in such a way that you can now have social recovery, you can have now permissions, you can have delegation, you can have a brand could now use a smart contract account with different departments and different roles and whatever else you need, as a big corporation to manage a single account together. So that's the foundation to make real interactions on blockchain user friendly. And now for us, it's not about building one interface and saying, here, this is the wallet and this wallet solves it all. For us, it was about building these standards, building the foundational building block. Same like ERC20 made everything in DeFi possible. In Luxo, the smart contract account, it's called ERC725 account under the hood. And there's a few more standards that make up this, what we call universal profiles, this smart contract account. And when you have a smart contract account, everything else can basically build around it. The cool interfaces, the cool recovery, the enterprise level interfaces and ways to manage it. And now you have an account on chain that can interact with everything on that same network. And that can be a lot of things, right? From trading NFTs, DeFi, to social, to land title registries, to communities, DAOs, co-living and co-owning. Everything is now possible. And that we have focused on the basis. Like my past experience at Ethereum was also, the basis. I was the lead DApp developer. I built the first Web3 browser called Mist back at the time. I built the first Ethereum wallet, the official Ethereum wallet from the Ethereum Foundation. And then I worked on Web3.js, the JavaScript library that all the DApps are using, and proposed ERC20, which was the token standard that literally everybody is using. And I've always been on the foundational level. In the last 5 years, I spent building the next foundation, which is universal profiles, new token standard, evolved token standards. And the only way to make this really possible is on a new network. That's why we started an Ethereum twin called Luxo, which is basically literally Ethereum 2, but with those new standards from the get-go. That everybody who's coming and building on Luxo gets to have universal profiles for their users, gets to have new token standards, gets to have the new things that make things far more, flexible and far more user-friendly. So, and that's where we are right now. So everything is kind of like going live, and people are creating NFTs and creating profiles and interacting. And if anybody wants to check this out, you can go to universalprofile.cloud and create your first on-chain profile.
Awesome. I'll have Darren or myself will pin up universal profiles up to the top as well. May, I know you had your hand up. I think we had audio issues before, but I think that you guys kind of have a unique touch point on this as well, being that, kind of the core focus within Hashback has been to develop out the user experience. But if you want to touch base on challenges for adoption and how you feel like we're going to overcome them, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
All right, so I definitely want to parrot Andre and Nibras's comments on UX. I think the UX of Web3 has largely been for technical users up to this point, and that's what you expect from like cutting edge technology and ecosystems that are built on people who are really excited about the technology, right? But now we're moving into more mainstream. We're trying to branch out. We're trying to make things that are actually useful for the world at large. And that means that the user experience has to be top notch. It has to be something that you can go in and use existing paradigms from Web 2 that you can just go in and do what you want to do. And I think that is really what everybody in the space is trying to solve right now. Everyone's working towards that, where we're seeing things like Magic Link that are bringing in email accounts that are still decentralized in some ways and still secure and still meet with Web3 ethos, but make it easy for people to start using it in a way that doesn't require you to understand what blockchain is. I'm seeing a lot of games in the Hedera space that are coming out with really cool solutions for the UX, where if you start playing on their platform, you don't have to know anything about crypto. You still get your collectibles and things like that. But then when you want to go onto secondary marketplaces, you want to participate in the collection game, you go and get a Hashpack wallet and you mint and you export your assets into something that is Web3 native. And I think that this kind of bridging between a normal kind of user experience to a Web3 user experience that has more features, such as privacy features or identity features or tokenized features, where I think that that's really the way that we can go forward. And I also want to touch on another challenge, which is the stigma around Web3 and crypto, where the whole NFT craze and token craze of 2017, 2020 have given crypto a bad rap. The media really likes to make it seem like everything in crypto is a Ponzi scheme, and we all of us here know that that's not the case, right? At the core of all of this is the technology that can have a real impact on real business, right? Things like fraud mitigation, privacy, supply chain logistics, all of these kind of things on top of all the economic benefits that you can get from crypto. I think as we see use cases come about and start using them and start wrapping that Web3 experience in a Web2 sort of veneer so that people can just use it and get benefits from the technology, I think that that's where we're going to see adoption. And I think that that's where everybody's focusing on right now.
Awesome. I told you guys, the audience down here listening, that I have 10 questions or 12 questions, and there is no way I'm getting through 12 questions. But I will say, and I think that this is an interesting opportunity to kind of, I was going to kind of ask about convergence of technology, the AI, quantum, zero knowledge, multi-party computing, digital, all that stuff. I think what I really maybe want to ask is, because we have such diverse speakers up here, what do you guys feel that your network platform or protocol does uniquely well And then what would you expect to, what would you like to see scale? What do you feel like still needs, improvement, or what would you expect to see scale in the near future, whether it's use cases or, the technology aspect? Maybe I'll start with Ben, because you guys have had through Constellation a lot of initiatives go live within the past handful of months, whether it's metagraphs and, maybe just if you could touch base on what you feel like Constellation does really well as a network, and what you would like to, or what you would expect to see scale in the near future.
Yeah, it's a fun question. So what do I think Constellation does really well? I think what we do well is we allow people to build application-specific networks on top of our core network. So really anyone can design an L1 network with pure customization, integrate in existing Java libraries or Docker containers to fetch off-chain data and put it on-chain. Developers can actually spin out their own set of node operators or validators so that their network is decentralized. They can provide their own incentives around their own ecosystem. And so it's really around like an ecosystem of ecosystems, allowing people to really build out this customization. But I think like the core of what we focus on is really fetching off-chain data, putting that on-chain, triggering incentives, or some sort of actual insight. Think of it like like a Zapier connector of sort. So when we kind of think, when we talk to developers or institutions, we're really getting them to think about creating their own like economy that will have marketability, right? Node operators provide marketability, they provide governance, they're really bought into the system at hand. And for us, what I would really like to see is kind of people thinking outside of the box in the next evolution of blockchain technology. And if I were to break it down into different generations, in the first generation, we saw peer-to-peer transactions, wallet transfers, and this was really a big step for decentralization, is that autonomy. And then we saw kind of the application layer come out with spot solutions. So, Ripple coming out and saying, hey, we want to have cross-border payments, better reconciliation of payments, and we're really going after the banking industry. And this kind of third evolution that's happening is bringing Web3 tooling into Web2, which means that, can we create standards? Can we integrate Web3 seamlessly in existing infrastructure without having to rip and replace the guts and force people into insular Web3 ecosystems? That's a different vision, because what that does then is opens up the floodgates for multiple workflows across one given agency or entity, right? So before it was just banking and cross-border payments. Now we're talking about how does financial data get shared across an entire organization, and can it be on the rails of blockchain to provide immutability, security, and transparency around a workflow that's data driven. And so that actually takes kind of a different leap into it dabbles into the kind of adoption question, and that our approach is kind of this one-to-many approach, right? You want to get through and create a standard that say Deloitte uses this as a standard for information sharing across accounting applications and data, financial information and data. And so a lot of what I think that we're really kind of focused on and is this like new narrative that's starting to exist in the space that is going to require kind of new standards that come out. And I think that working with the federal government and showing how this technology can really play is going to provide a substantial impact that extends beyond digital currencies. So I think that answers your question in full.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Ben. Let me go to, I think, Darren, after this kind of round of questions, let's try to get maybe one more, maybe the personal vision one, because we're probably going to run at time here. I know sometimes when we do these cross-chain spaces, it's really like I can get 10 or 12 questions through, but we have really kind of deep thought processes here because you've got kind of the core leader groups within a lot of these ecosystems up here on the panel. But let me ask Andre a similar question. From the XDC ecosystem, from the trade tech ecosystem, what do you feel that trade tech and XDC do uniquely well within this industry? And what are some of the things you would like to see scale over time?
Yeah, I think when we have new technologies like Web3 today, we have to succeed to introduce really new innovations, not just changing what has been done in the past and improving what traditional use cases, but we really have to introduce those new technologies to achieve what we have never been able to achieve before. And it's all about, indeed, on the technical side, around interoperability, about identity, portable identities, and many other different use cases, because Web3 is all about having a digital notary that enables us to rely on data, not just exchange data and rely on the sender of the data. So, as part of those new innovations, what we have done since years, and we had a first attempt 2 years ago, and we have a second version coming now soon. It's all about making these illiquid asset classes, such as SME financing. And SME financing is very easy to understand. It's about bringing liquidity to businesses, usually below investment grade, and those that have a hard time to get funding from their banks or the lenders, and making those small businesses grow thanks to additional liquidity that they get from a tokenized DeFi environment. So this is making an illiquid asset class investable by new types of funders. And this asset class has already been very hard to access for institutional investors, but TradeTech is making this happen thanks to traditional securitization. And of course, the technology is such that the asset class is becoming much more accessible, transparent for institutional investors. But thanks to tokenization and the partnership between TradeTech and XDC, which is bringing yield tech to the world. We have initially started with US Treasury bills being tokenized. That's a traditional use case, and this is running on securitized in the US as per regulatory framework. So the US there is quite welcoming such a tokenization use case for a traditional asset. But making trade finance accessible to accredited investors and bringing new liquidity into this very complex asset class is at a much lower cost base versus securitization is definitely something that has never been done before, and tokenization is really making a difference here, as well as a regulatory framework behind it. So that's, I think, where we have to focus on, is really bringing new value to the market, not trying to change what has been working. And on the Ripple side, I have 24 years background at Swift. When I saw Ripple starting to attack Swift and trying to bring the large banks and the large corporates onto Ripple away from Swift, I thought that was a big mistake, because they were trying to introduce a new technology for a use case that was sorted. It could be improved, but it was sorted. So then 2 years later, about 2018, they started focusing on the extremely low value micro payments. And this is where, of course, the tokenization is much more valuable, because the cost base of tokenization is much lower. And that's where Swift can't compete, because they even don't operate those micro payments. So trying to focus on bringing new value based on new technology should be our aim. And sometimes you have an intermediary step in having a more traditional use case as a first one, but we have to focus on building really new use cases and new value to the market, and then tokenization will become obvious.
Awesome, thank you so much, Andre. Let me go to Nibras as far as what you feel like, and I know that you're just stepping into CEO of Brilliant, so don't feel like we're asking for a deep dive into the technology here, but what you feel like the next era ecosystem does uniquely well, and how kind of Brilliant plays a role within that, that'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think what I really want to emphasize on when it comes to the uniqueness of Brilliant, and also, I mean, as you said yourself, I did actually recently join. I've been here less than a week now, but a part of me joining, to be honest, is that I really like the whole thought through about ease of use, but also to be the wallet for real world assets deep in and autonomous agents. So I'm a really big lover of AI myself as well. And one of the things that I have thought a lot about is that, well, once AI gets to grow more and more, and I mean, we're already there, to be honest, we're going to see autonomous agents. And the reality is we're going to allow AI and LLMs to do tasks that they can also take decisions on. So when we get there, how can you verify that accountability, and how can you also verify which LLM it is? So one of the things that we can do is also to give autonomous agents an identity, so they can then go ahead and take decisions. I mean, they're going to be so much smarter than us, to be honest. So them making decision making on top of us is going to be a thing. So I'm also very excited to see the bridge between AI and blockchain, and I definitely think when it comes to identity, but also the need of a wallet there is extremely unique. So I think it is very interesting, and I also think being a multi chain wallet is interesting. Going back to the UX, I mean, as a user, I don't want to have several accounts on several wallets. I just want to have one place to store everything, and that'd be my source of truth in a way. So I think it's a lot there. I also know Brilliant is founded by Rashid and Matthias, who also founded Nexera Foundation. And one of the interesting part there is that we integrate with Nexera ID, which is a really full solution for KYC, KYB, and AML. So what that also brings in is that once we have a user onboarded, they can also store verifiable credentials that they can then use across multiple chains and DApps. So the self-sovereign identity experience is something that speaks true to me, that I think is extremely unique in this industry. I mean, we have the traditional big tech, and really the name big tech is just because they store massive amounts of data and then they monetize out of it. Well, the interesting thing with the Web3, in my opinion, and with this technology is that we don't really have to have that anymore with self-sovereign identity. You could choose yourself when to allow a company to get hold of your data, and while doing so, you can also then in the future get rewarded for that. So I think everyone benefits out of that, and I also really am excited to see how that is going to come across in a wider range of also like emerging markets, right? I think when it comes to what I would like to see scale, we are actually just starting up with Brilliant. So we also are gonna be very interested in see like, okay, so what's coming next and how can we be a big part of that. I'm also very excited for the B2B solution that we are bringing in with a whole toolkit to work even closer with the other layer ones, layer twos, and the apps out there. So I think it's going to be really interesting, and it's going to be a really fun ride, and I'm really excited for what's coming.
Awesome. Thank you, Nibras. And Matthew from the Aleph Zero ecosystem. Then I'll go to May and Fabian. And then Darren's probably got one last question for everybody. And I know that everybody's super busy. Appreciate it. And really valuable viewpoints. Hope you guys all enjoy being up on this panel. I mean, it's awesome talking to so many different people. But Matthew, from your stance.
Yeah, so I hear this question, and I think what it comes down to is the priority that you're choosing whenever it comes to execution. Because at the end of the day, technology-wise, this is almost all the same. So it just comes down to what you want to prioritize, what you want to put your emphasis on as a project and as an organization. With that said, I would say what we do at Aleph Zero is really put more on the more emphasis on the foundational principles of the underlying technology stack and building this in a way that is the best way possible. So whether or not it's with Aleph BFT, with our consensus protocol that is fully asynchronous and also has constant complexity for transaction finality, as well as constant communication, which is basically the best you could possibly do from a mathematical perspective, or if it's coming in and improving on the cryptographic primitives and doing a much better proof generation on zero knowledge proofs, or coming up with better solutions for multi-party computation as far as implementation, so that these things are much faster. You do that, and then you start thinking about how can you combine these different technological primitives, or in this case, I guess I think of them as math primitives, and put them together to build out new applications that you haven't been able to see before. For instance, take for instance what we're doing with Common, and the privacy version of Common. I mean, we haven't really seen a lot of people, I don't think anybody, who's actually combined both zero knowledge proofs with multi-party computation to go ahead and achieve an order book based privacy AMM, automated market maker, right? So it's doing all these little things and putting these pieces together to allow for blinding of amounts, so that you don't necessarily know what is the total order on the order book, and you don't necessarily know who's the account that made the bid or the ask, and doing so that takes both the privacy primitives that you normally have, MPC and zero knowledge proofs, and build out these new applications. And so being able to use that kind of domain expertise and work with other developers coming up with, so that they can come up with their ideas, their applications, and help them achieve their vision, I think is something that we really work well at doing, and that's what I think we're really where we really shine.
Awesome, Matthew. Thank you. May, would love your insight on this.
Yeah, I do want to say that when I was looking into L1s back in 2020, and Hedera caught my eye. The other one that I was really interested in was LF0, and it's great to see how far you guys have come. And I'm so excited about the privacy solutions that you guys have, and it's great to be on a panel talking to you and listening to what you guys are doing. It's fantastic. I'm super hyped. And on the other side, Hedera is also a place that I really like to build on. I think that there are some specific benefits to building on the platform. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because I don't want to talk about it, but the things that are really great on Hedera is that the gas prices are stable, so you can just, as a business, know how much you're going to spend on transactions if you know how much volume you're going to get. And I think that that's a really big one for businesses that are trying to build on something, but they're not crypto native, so they don't really want to do the taxes around managing tokens. I think that that's a cool one. The other thing that is great on Hedera is that it's written in JavaScript, the SDK, so it's actually really easy to get people to come onto the network and start building on it. And so developers find it, that are coming from Web 2, find it really easy to start building on the network, and then they see the fast transactions and the reliability of the network and all of that jazz that a Hedera person might talk about. But I think that the experience, the developer experience on Hedera is really great. And I think that what we built at Hashpack as the leading wallet, I think that we've built a really great user experience that makes it really easy for people to come in and try different things and try out our DeFi ecosystem and stuff. And I think that that's something that we do very well. And so I'm really excited about the future of Hedera and where we're going to go. I think we're going to jump really far. And I think that alongside the other L1s here that are making big moves in the spaces like privacy and decentralized identity, I think that that's going to be the narrative here. And so I think we will have a really interesting 2024 and 2025 as we kind of see where each chain, where each L1 is aiming at and excelling at, and I think we'll see a lot of people succeed, not just one alt chain or anything like that.
Awesome. Thank you, May. And then Fabian, from the Luxo standpoint, what I think we've alluded to it a couple of times, but I would love if you could maybe expand on, we talked about user experience and kind of being at, the core level of what you guys are developing with Luxo. But maybe this question for you is more so, where do you see that taking the network in the future? I mean, what types of things do you feel like will be built on the network? And I'm sure there's probably a lot of examples that you can't even think of right now that are going to be built. But what would you like to see scale? What do you expect to scale? And what do you see coming down the pipeline for out of the infrastructure that's kind of been set in place for Luxo?
I mean, this is a good question, and this is also a very tricky question for me because I have been around, in crypto since 2013, and in Ethereum in 2015 and so on, when we had smart contracts and all the ideas that were around. I mean, many of the ideas that we see today, NFTs, like the DeFi, the DAO, all of this is ideas from like back in the day, right? We already thought about all of these things. So for me, it's kind of always feels something, isn't that like obvious that all these things you can literally decentralize everything? I mean, some things more with scale and some things less with scale. But I guess, and so it's really hard for me to really think always about that very concrete the next thing. And funny enough, the things that are really then on the end being the one who become big are the most unexpected ones, right? Where you think like for example, Friendster, like somebody creating social accounts where people invest before it's even owned by the actual person. Where you think like, who comes up with an idea like this, um, or friend tech. But the thing is, on the end, what I can emphasize is the properties, and the properties that you have is you have an account that is a blockchain account. That blockchain account can obviously, you have keys, so you can sign stuff. That means you can make encrypted messaging. You can sign in and log into websites using sign in with Ethereum. You can attach information to the account. That could be, for example, information that's off chain, maybe some zero knowledge proofs. It could be for other protocols on chain, follower or reputation protocol. There could be anything people can imagine that you somehow can reference from your account. I mean, also solving the problem like, where are the PGP keys of a person, that's, writing emails, right? You can add all of this to your account, on-chain readable, smart contract readable, off-chain readable as you wish. And then you can manage your account. And this is the biggest thing because obviously crypto has been extremely hard to use. I don't think a lot of people are using the same private keys across devices because, or that's just used on the end of a ledger where all the money is, and then, maybe two different devices. So everything's very fragmented, very hard to use. But really the biggest thing also is reactability. So, and that's the thing that you definitely don't have. I mean, if you have a wallet, like MetaMask, you have no ability to attach information. People then kind of do this with ENS, but ENS can constantly switch your address, right? But you can't react on incoming stuff. And the ERC-75 account, smart contract account, can do that. So you can basically notify, or a protocol or a token, for example, notifies your smart contract account, and now you can invent whatever protocol that does something on this notification. For example, for a follow request, you could do auto accept or reject based on certain rules. When you receive a token, you could reject it or reroute it based on whatever rules. You could do the same thing for DAO, voting requests, and other things. You can really like make a whole app store now of, we call this universal receiver, smart contracts that act in different ways based on whatever happens, when your profile gets notified. And that can be all automated because we're in smart contract land. For the ones who like maybe don't fully understand, the ES75 account is a smart contract standard. That means it works literally on every EVM chain. So we haven't built a custom new chain that has something custom built in and it's like a one type of thing. It's a standardized smart contract account that lives on Luxor first because that's where it's born. Luxor itself works like Ethereum. So it's pretty much exactly like Ethereum, has 140,000 validator keys running the network right now. but it also works everywhere else. And actually, we will be opening up to Ethereum and also other chain the universal profiles, because this is a standard that is generic and important enough for the whole space to use, because everybody's looking for a smart contract account, and this is the smart contract account that has been 5 years in the making. Nevertheless, on Luxor, the benefit is you get to have gasless transactions, because we can subsidize, and because there's transaction relay services that will make it very easy a very easy user experience. You can create an account with a few clicks. You can interact with DApps right away. You don't need to worry about getting Lux from an exchange and stuff. You have the new token standards. The whole ecosystem has from the ground up adopted all the new standards. So there's a lot more possibilities, a lot more automations, a lot more integratedness. You can use a universal proof on any other chain, but you probably won't use a few of the features just because these chains are running on ERC20 and standards from 5 years ago, and they haven't really been able to evolve beyond that because the network effect took place. And that's the benefit, of being on the new chain, cheaper transactions, the new standard ecosystem that embraces the new world, basically the new abilities and new possibilities. And it's about, like building whatever you want to do, be it in the social direction, be it in this culture direction, and be it in, network states, community forming, new governance rules, DeFi, whatever people can imagine can be now built better and has social component built in, because you have now a account that can have and hold information and can react in more sophisticated ways. So that's kind of what Luxor is in a nutshell. And if you're a developer, I invite you to go to luxor.network, click on the docs, go through the learn section, understand it's very easy. Building on Luxor is literally the same like building on Ethereum, Polygon, or any other chain. Nothing changes for you at first, but you have now more possibilities, because the account that you are, sending a transaction from actually has stored information and has a better user experience for the user. And then you can go down the rabbit hole and explore and what this new standard has.
I wanted to ask everyone their just the forward-looking statements and the vision of their ecosystem and the industry as a whole. So what they see with the industry moving forward. So I guess let's start off with Nibras. Can you just let us know what you think is your ecosystem and the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think when it comes to like our ecosystem, and of course, when I say our, I mean, Brilliant is an EVM based wallet. So we're building on EVM, but we're also multi-chain. So we look at all chains out there. We want to get to most ecosystems, but I do think when it comes to a wide level of adoption in the ecosystem, we're looking for major partnerships and technological breakthroughs. So always, in my opinion, I have security really high up, to be honest. I mean, we're building a non-custodial wallet, so security is extremely important out there. And Andre, I know you started by saying that like back in the day, some of the things were scary, and I really don't want that to be the experience. It should be a very secure and seamless experience for our users. So I think some of these things is what we need to think about. I also think one of the things I actually love about this industry, to be honest, when I talk to some of my friends and past coworkers, is that I don't feel, at least myself, that the thing about competition, just in my opinion, like also when I was at Concordium, which was a layer one, was I don't feel we are at the point where we see competition, but everything is actually about helping each other and collaborating, because the technology is so new and because we are defining groundbreaking technology. You're so open to helping others and having researchers come together from a wider range of companies, sharing knowledge, understanding what's going on, so we can all make sure we get that adoption, which I'm also really excited about. I think that is key to the ecosystem. I really hope that we continues with this, because that's also how we're gonna be able to get to a point where blockchain technologies is widely adopted and widely also used. So I think there's a lot to showcase for, and there's a lot also to come at when it comes to adoption. But I really hope that this partnerships with the other layer ones, layer twos, and also being part of the ecosystem continues.
Fabian, what's your forward-looking statements, vision for your ecosystem and the industry as a whole? I guess I'll move on to Matt and I'll circle back. Matt, can you talk about your just vision for your ecosystem and the industry as a whole and any forward-looking statements?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say as a industry as a whole, this is really technology that gives people freedom. And we have to understand and recognize that. Now, this is the origins of Bitcoin. And I know I've probably have said this multiple times on these spaces before, but you look at what is the real underlying reason why people are so fed up with the policies of the central banks and of the governments of the world. It's because they are inflating their wealth away. They're stealing it, from people who are saving, and so people are fleeing and looking for alternatives, right? And so that was the initial premise of Bitcoin, is that you could do peer-to-peer transactions without any centralized intermediary. And how we've come from there is moved beyond just peer-to-peer transactions, but we're talking about completely decentralized finance with no custodians, no centralized intermediaries. We can have clearinghouses, we can have exchanges, essentially peer-to-peer bartering systems that are fully trustless. That you don't require that third party to make sure that the transaction isn't going to go ahead and go wrong. And that's traditionally where these actors would come in and operate, is they were trying to make sure that, hey, if there's some type of exchange between assets in a stock or on a commodity marketplace, they wanted to make sure that nobody was getting things were orderly, right? And then historically you had the CFTC and the SEC and all the regulations were actually there to make sure that those centralized actors weren't being nefarious. So we have this system in place with smart contracts, with this entire industry to really be disruptive and to give more power back to the people without having a lot of government say, other than, well, making sure that it's sort of laissez-faire and we're abiding by the proper rules and orders of having an orderly marketplaces. So I guess whenever it comes down to, that's sort of how I view this industry as a whole, and I always have. Now, as far as what we're doing within Aleph Zero and what I see as far as the vision there is really about enabling application developers to build whatever it is that they want to be building, primarily on the privacy enhancing technology stacks. And so doing so in a way that gives you the most, the best UI, UX capabilities that, to make this seamless, whether or not it's using the most advanced cryptography that's or at least the most innovative that's out there, and actually putting it to putting it to practice from the academic world, and then actually bringing it out to market to industry, and then being able to use that in your applications. I mean, I think that's really cool. I mean, this technology in and of itself is just cool stuff, and I don't think that people really quite feel and understand, what is the promise of Bitcoin and of this entire industry is sort of this freedom, freedom technology. But it's more than that. It's really a lot more. There's just so many applications, just so cool, whether or not it's, being able to track provenance of supply chain, or being able to do, like, I don't know, there's some really interesting applications on private supply chain solutions where you have like think of it as operations research, but then operations research is normally like, how do you move supplies in wartime? And in this case, maybe we don't want to talk about wartime, but you can think of a more civilian application and a peace application where it's just, how does the market move its own, how does it move different commodities for the best use if you have a multiple, I don't know, assets in the supply chain, and do so in a way where all these, all the assets are owned by multiple parties, but then being able to go ahead and use, say, multi-party computation and confidential computing to be able to come up with like a solution where you're not revealing who has the assets and where they are and at what prices, but still being able to get your end product that is built out and manufactured with the best possible price. So there's the technology is just so cool, and I think that's what makes me so excited about what's happening. And then it's just we've started and we've been building out stuff for a while, and not just us but the entire industry. But really, the sky is the limit. This is stuff that's not going anywhere anytime soon, and there's a lot of things that we would like to see more of, that we would like to see, say, like a decentralized lending protocol that's fully private, or being able to take real world assets and then start doing lending on those real world assets. So opening up capital markets whenever it comes to private equity. It's just that, sky's the limit whenever it comes down to all this stuff. And, it just takes time to build out that the infrastructure, and to build out the relations with corporates and enterprises that are the traditional players in these markets and in these industries. And that's just something that I think this entire industry has been working at. We've been working at that, and it takes time. I mean, the corporate sales cycle is much longer than the degen life cycle of launching a meme coin on whatever chain that you want to be launching it on. So it's just, but I also want to emphasize, like, it's cool, it's fun. Let's have if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Totally. Go ahead, Darren.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the use cases are unlimited. We tend to focus on financial products because they're the low-hanging fruit, but really you could get into some really interesting use cases. May, I wanted to ask you if you had any forward-looking statements or anything about the vision of your ecosystem or the future.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Hedera itself, we are seeing incredible growth this year. Our volume on our main DEX doubled in January, and then it doubled again by early March. So like we're like zooming along. I think that I'm really excited to see what happens in Hedera, but on a broader kind of viewpoint, I think that as a industry, we're on the cusp of bridging the gap between our highly technical crypto crowd and our mainstream internet demographic that just want to do things on the internet. And I think I see across all of the different networks, people are really focusing on UX UI and making things as seamless as possible for the non-technical users. And I think that Hashpack's dominance in the Hedera ecosystem is because we've nailed that user experience. So I really think that that's the way to go, and will bring a lot of success moving out of just the pure crypto zone. Another thing I think we'll see this time around is non-DeFi and non-crypto businesses start to use DLTs for the unique properties of the technology, like immutability and trustlessness, and that the end user won't ever even know that the platform is using it. Kind of like how people don't know if a website is using AWS or Google Cloud, right? So I think things are moving. I think that we'll see this kind of adoption more on the longer term. But if we do see that, or when we do see that, it will really mark a shift in how blockchain technology is being adopted when companies start using it and then they start outperforming more traditional platforms and outcompeting them because of the unique advantages of blockchain technology. So that's my forward-looking statement.
Thanks, May. Ben, same question to you.
Yeah, I love following what May said. I thought that was a brilliant answer, forward-looking statements, and I do think that when I look outward on this whole world that we're existing in and building in, we're looking for a future, like I said earlier, of businesses using the core tenets, like May said. But I think there's something really valuable about tokenizing those assets at a business level that creates another line item on your P&L, that you now a business has a treasury, right? And they're tokenizing certain assets, just like we saw with, in a way, what we saw with the airline industry, going out and getting a loan again from the government against their miles programs, and collateralizing those mile programs at a 10x multiple than their publicly traded market cap, if you will. And I'm hoping that world comes into existence. Now, how we could see that come through to fruition is that these major ecosystems start to address some of the issues underlying grant programs and how ecosystems are distributing grants to developers. And many of the developers are chasing liquidity. So they'll go to one ecosystem and they're saying, hey, we're going to do a multi-chain product and it's going to do all of this. But really they just pick one and then they fork it once the funding dries up from one ecosystem, goes to another. And so it's just chasing liquidity in this kind of really shitty flywheel, if you will, versus like, where is that external adoption? When are we bringing other assets? When are we collateralizing those? How do we push the needle forward? And I think as ecosystems, and I think this is maybe a call to those that are on the call that I would love to align after this call, and because it's kind of something I've been building on the stealth, is really kind of a standard or working group around creating kind of a templated version of grant programs, and to align with other ecosystem on how we want to push forward various grant programs. Because I see that a lot of these ecosystems now are not competitive by nature. In 2018, it was a competitive by nature, like, let's build scalable Ethereum, right? Now we're becoming very industry specific or category or sector specific. And that's happening more and more, right? And so the way that we can drive that adoption in the real world assets is actually through the grant program. And there's billions of dollars across all the ecosystems to effectively distribute grants as a fundraising mechanism for new entrepreneurs. But if these new entrepreneurs are constantly just chasing liquidity and trying to get the most liquidity out of their token, they're kind of missing the big picture of building a sustainable business on Web3, thus allowing the proliferation of the entire industry. And so we're kind of trapped in this like flywheel, as I said. So I think that's happening. Like, we're seeing that with DPIN. We have a product that is a physical sensor. It collects foot traffic in a doorway. It distributes a digital currency. You can stake that digital currency to become a node operator and validate all the transactions. And we've done about 3 million transactions in the course of like four months or so. And by the way, all the speakers on the call, I would be happy to collaborate on the grant program, but also give you a DTM. If it's called a door traffic miner. I'd be happy to give you one just to kind of get your brains, get your thoughts. You guys are all leaders in the space. I'd love to see what you guys think about it. And that process was, for the DTM, was going back to the user experience that so many people talked about. That was our attempt to make crypto very user-friendly. So you take one of these devices, you stick it above your doorway. We collect location data, traffic data. You set the device up with a very simple iOS or Android app. And in like a few clicks, you already have the device up and running. You have a pre-generated key to receive your crypto rewards. And now you're getting rewards based off of data that has value in the real world. So I think we're making those inroads. And so what I'm excited about, within our ecosystem, is kind of that push towards businesses bringing utility on chain, thinking outside of just the perpetual liquidity flywheel that everybody's chasing after. So those are kind of my forward-looking statements and excitement for our ecosystem. And we're just building so many cool things internally. Our developer ecosystem starting to build some really interesting ideas that just are are they're different than what's out there. It's not the meme coins, although it would have been great to capture some of that momentum, but there's real intention behind every business thought. And I loved what Tim Draper said around ordinals. Like that goes in line with the ordinals, right? The Door traffic miner is literally an ordinal around data that people can't otherwise collect. And we provide a device to seamlessly collect that and cryptographically secure that, provide transparency on how our network is done. So I think we're going to see more around this use of ordinals or oracles in the space as it applies to privacy, identity, collateralizing certain assets. I think it's an exciting time to be in the space, regardless of the regulatory pressures.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate your insight.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your insights. Andre, can you talk about some of your visions of the future and just any forward-looking statements?
Yes, definitely, and I think we're definitely on the right track. The proof points I can bring to back this up is around the number of regulators creating new laws to attract the tokenization Web3 digital asset industry. And they are competing. Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, UAE are all competing to attract talent. And the way they compete is to establish new laws, new regulatory framework. And of course, some countries are taking even bolder step, like El Salvador and others, smaller countries, of course, and others are kind of behind on some aspects, like the US. But that doesn't mean you can't introduce tokenization in the US. Look at just at how Securitize is indeed helping TradeTech and BlackRock to launch tokenization products. So I think what we're going to be amazed by, or in the short term, will be the big names, the major financial institutions, possibly more on the asset management side, capital markets, and then later the banks, building on these regulatory frameworks and getting the regulatory clarity is for them a green light to take advantage of the new technologies across multiple use cases. So the number of big names, and we have already a few, I've mentioned BlackRock and there are others on the Bitcoin ETF, for instance. So we know them, but there are many more that will start investing or launching, because they are investing now basically, but they're waiting sometimes for green lights and preparing products to be launched. So that is what is going to make a big difference to bring our technologies, the Web3 technologies, into the mainstream. And then those Web3 technologies will cover Web2 use cases, native Web3 use cases, like carbon credits, for instance, is another area I'm focusing on. And the Web3 technologies will become invisible. So I think the moment where all the work we have done over the last few years is paying off, because we have demonstrated as an emerging industry that we are making sense. We can't be ignored, and that has triggered regulatory work, regulatory competition, regulatory clarity, and will unlock the incumbents into our taking advantage of our technologies. So very bullish on that side. I am.
Thanks, Andre. And Fabian, I don't know if you're back, but if you have any forward-looking statements, we'd appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, thank you. I mean, from my perspective, we are really in the early days, and the last few years have been exploration on the Linux level, if you want to compare it to, the technology or kind of the DOS, like I said before, and, MS-DOS and Linux. And now we are finally at the place where we have the right foundations on which we can create a far more inclusive, a far more usable, and a far more, immersive kind of interaction on blockchain. And on the end, people shouldn't know that they use crypto, but they should use crypto in some form, because it allows for self-sovereignty, independent accounts that are not owned by governments or platforms or some third party, but they're truly just yours. And they have the ability to transact globally. And with that as a basis and the ability that we can use this properly everywhere, that will allow us to actually create, network states, global communities that have transactability as part of their, existence. And I think, over time, this will change everything. And that foundation has been missing so far. I mean, it was there, right, for the Linux nerds, but if you really look at like how many people actually use wallets on a daily basis, it's no one. Even if you go to the greatest crypto conference of everybody, barely anybody is using stuff there. Like what people have been doing is trading, hoarding, and using that kind of financial trading aspect of crypto, but they haven't used actually blockchain and crypto. I hope this will change, and given that like things like ERC20, which are the foundation of a lot of stuff, that's sometimes such a simple agreement on a standard, then booms such an ecosystem. I hope the same will happen here with the foundation that we have built, because it is that missing block that we didn't have back in the day. We didn't have proper smart contract accounts, and was 2015 way too early to even think that way, because we just had to figure out basic stuff of what you do with smart contracts. But now we have it. And it will be very fascinating to see how this evolves. And now we can create a user experience that is better than Web 2, but you have 100% the control, like in Web 3. And that makes the big difference. People on the end down the road won't know for real, or don't even care. They just know, hey, this is my account, I have the control over, and that's a platform sign-in, right? That's different. Yeah, and that's where we need to go. So that's what I'm looking forward to continue building, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing other people build on top.
Well, thank you. Appreciate everyone coming and joining us today. Appreciate everybody talking, and I hope
I think
everyone...
we have to. I know Nebras. I know that you messaged me on the side here, but I would love. I think we had tech issues, but just if you want to give your forward-looking statement, that would be absolutely fantastic. And again, congrats on your new role within the Next Era ecosystem and Brilliant. That'd be great.
Thank you, and sorry about that. I'll be quick. I agree with everything that's been said, and I'm super excited to hear everyone's aspect. It's always interesting to hear what everyone's thinking about. What I think my forward-looking statement and what I'm really excited about is we touched base on it, but it's really the empowerment for every one of us and what this technology brings. And I myself think it's interesting when I talk to some people and they sometimes it sounds like they don't believe in Web3, and for me it's like, but there's nothing not to believe in. It's the evolution of internet. We had Web 1, we have Web 2, and now if you can do something better with also like sending a monetational value, that's just going to be the reality of the future in a way. I do think also my tech geeky hat on here, which we haven't really touched base on, is how you can also use the technology of distributed ledgers for cybersecurity, right? We did touch base a little bit about AI and what that's going to do. And also with the rise of AI, we're also going to see so many more cyber attacks coming. And I do also feel that understanding blockchain technology and also how that enhancements of security is there, because you don't really have one single source of truth. So you're not as vulnerable. I can never say that word. Sorry, guys. You're not as vulnerable to attacks. And I think that's also really interesting. And I myself I'm very interested in seeing the evolution of that and how that's going to be adopted in the technology of the future. So I would say really the empowerment of people, and I touched base on it myself with if I'm part of the data that's been shared, how can I get a monitoring value out of it, but also the security aspects that blockchain brings to the space, amongst everything else that everyone touched base on with tokenization and the UI UX advancements. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I have to say, gigantic shout out to Darren for spending the past 3 months trying to get Tim Draper onto a space. That is an exercise in persistence if I've ever seen one. So thank you to Darren and for helping to put together all of those questions. Always do such an amazing job up here with, helping us to network and co-host. And OG, like my brother in this space for like 5 years. And huge shout out to Ben Jorgensen, CEO of Constellation. Congratulations on your guys' announcement today. If you guys missed it, Decentralized Recovery Alliance with Constellation, XRPL Labs, Ripple, Hedera, Algorand, Casper, Bank Social, and everybody from Hedera. Will be interesting to watch those types of standards being pushed forward in a collaborative manner. Similar thing that we try to do in these spaces as much as possible. We try to get different industry-leading opinions, and we had such a great panel up here today. So Ben, thank you. Matthew Niemerg from Aleph Zero, Mei Chan from Hashpack and the Hedera ecosystem, Fabian Vogelsteller, origins obviously within a lot of the initiatives that everybody is talking about and using today with smart contracts and Ethereum, and now building out a seamless user experience and new creative economies on Luxo. Andre Casterman from the Trade Tech and XTC ecosystem. Tokenization is real. It is here and it is happening, and don't believe it's going to be slowing down anytime in the future. Really appreciate your time today, sir. We have never had the opportunity to have you on a space, and looking forward to having you again. And then Nibras from the Brilliant and Nextera ecosystem. Just fantastic to have all of you guys up here today. I don't know how we always end these exactly on time based on the calendar invites, but somehow we managed to nail it out before 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that being said, we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Hope the whole panel up here follows each other and has conversations in the future. We will talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Great job.